M&A activity recovered significantly in 2025, with global deal value reaching around $3.6 trillion, about 77% of the 21 peak pre-pandemic level, and increasing for the second year in a row. The US accounted for most of this growth, driving nearly 85% of the year-over-year increase in total value. Welcome to CFO IQ, where CFOs share insights and intelligence on innovative growth strategies and the experiences that drive success for their companies and themselves. I'm your host, Andy Zezas. Interestingly, transformative mega deals, those with value in excess of $1 billion, have returned to prominence, signaling a shift from the cautious deal environment of 2024 to bold consolidation strategies in sectors like healthcare, technology, and energy. What does this mean? Well, it means that while the number of deals hasn't fully recovered to early 2020 levels, high-value deals are driving headline figures and pushing overall market value upward. And that's true in all sectors, including the middle market. Today, I'm joined by Brian Giambagno. Brian's career has taken him from operations to line management for regional companies to those with an international twist, to family-owned and private equity-owned companies, and a list of acquisitions that will absolutely surprise you. Brian is a long-term friend and a very, very accomplished CFO. Brian, I'm so glad you're here to share your perspectives with our CFO IQ audience. Thanks for being with us here today.
Thank you for having me, Andy. My pleasure.
Well, we're going to have some fun. So let's talk a little bit about M&A. Your last CFO role was one in which you completed a huge number of acquisitions. Did you actually complete, was the number over 50 acquisitions? Was that the right number?
It was. I spent about 16 years with that company, and during my 16-year career, we closed over 50 acquisitions, ranging from $1 million to, a $200 million type of deal and everything in between.
That's amazing, Brian. How do you close 50 deals successfully, of course, while you're maintaining your CFO day job?
I'd say early on, we did it in our spare time. We had a detailed project plan. We pulled folks out of their day job, to cross-functional teams from HR to finance to IT to operations. And it was challenging, but it was also invigorating. We knew where we were going. We knew what the challenge in front of us, and we were up for that challenge. But as we grew and the volume of transactions began to pick up and they started to overlap, we knew we needed to add resources. So over time, we added dedicated resources. Probably, 10 years into it, we added our first fully dedicated director of M&A. We added a PMO, a project management office, because of the overlapping tasks and project plans. And then we even went as far as a dedicated training group out in the field, so that to ensure that our operating integration was successful. So it spanned from, roll up your sleeves and do it in your spare time, to having a pretty sophisticated structure in place to handle the volume of transactions and all the detailed tasks behind them.
All right, so there's no doubt that you're an expert at team building as well. So, but with that kind of volume, tell me about, tell me what the essential components are to achieving that kind of success in M&A, because 50 transactions over that period of time is tremendous. So tell me about the essential components to doing that.
Sure. And let's even take a step back and look at the transactions. So they usually fall into one of three categories. You're either looking at kind of geographic expansion, you might be looking at a new service offering, or you might be looking at a transaction to drive operational efficiency, sometimes referred to as a tuck-in. So depending on the size, the complexity, and the direction, that kind of dictated the resources needed in the planning. We use, quite frankly, a very detailed integration playbook. That playbook was developed and improved over the years. Each of our functional leads had their own workbook within that playbook. Could be finance, HR, IT, right down to, gee, we need to add 3 more time clocks to the operations so that on day one, the new employees can punch in. So hundreds and hundreds of tasks within a playbook to give our team the guidance. Now, also understanding no two transactions are exactly the same. So you always needed to be able to pivot within a transaction. But our integration would start pre-transaction, weeks in advance, where we bring the team together, discuss the transaction, discuss what we're trying to get out of the transaction. Is it expansion? Is it service offering? Is it a simple tuck-in? And then we would continue post-close to ensure we did what we said we were going to do. And I think that's part of the success of these transactions, was making sure we did what we said we were going to do.
So you're right. Every transaction is a custom project, right? There are no two are the same. But while you're doing all this, and it sounds like the process and the plan was very, very well laid out and obviously executed well as well, but you were still running a company. So while you're doing all this, and I love the fact you said you started doing it in your spare time, as if you had some of that. But while you're running the company, you're handling all these acquisitions. But how did at the same time, how did you also drive organic growth?
So in my career at different companies, for the most part, in that mid-market, I've been in mid-market high growth companies. Some companies focused more on organic, where we had large customers with large transactions, where we were trying to either, provide new services to those customers, maybe gaining share of wallet of an existing customer and driving organic, supplemented by M&A. Or on the other hand, some companies are really driven by M&A, and the organic component is a smaller component. So, we looked at it from, the driving factors. And I spent the past 25 years in the private equity backed companies, and they kind of lead the way, and they'll set out the goals, the long term kind of 3 to 5, 5 to 7 year horizon, and what do we want to accomplish and how do we want to get there? Is it driven through M&A? Is it through organic, or a combination of the two? And then we make sure we have the resources in place. When we're in such a growth mode, we refer to it as the complexity curve. We're coming up the complexity curve, and every once in a while, you need to reinvent yourself. You also need to understand what resources you need in place to get to where you want to go. Where do we want to be 3 to 5 years from now? Running a $500 million business is different than running a $100 million business. Running $1 billion company is different than a 500. You need different organizational structure. You may need different systems, different processes. That all has to be evaluated as while you're balancing organic versus M&A growth.
Were there specific steps that you took to maintain your organic growth while you were focusing on additional acquisition?
No, I would say that's, call that business as usual, right? Your organic growth, your sales team, your customer service, your inside sales continued. And then I would say, in addition to that, you had, other folks, be it in finance, HR, operations, that were really taking the lead on the M&A growth.
Brian, you've done so many things. Your career has taken a lot of different directions, and you've accomplished so much. Do you consider yourself a generalist or a specialist?
It's a great question, Andy. In general, I would consider myself a generalist. I've worked in a number of different industries, mostly business services, manufacturing, some technology based. If there's a specialization that I have, it's in the mid-market, high growth, private equity backed companies. I spent probably the past 25 years in that space. High growth, private equity portfolio companies, driving high growth. So I would say, from an industry perspective, I'm a generalist. From a specialization, if there is one, is mid-market, high growth, private equity backed companies.
And you've demonstrated yourself to be a specialist not only in M&A growth, which is demonstrated by the tremendous amount of deals you've done, 50 deals in a period of time, but also through organic growth. So I think I'd agree with you with a twist. You're a generalist with a number of specializations.
It's true. And even within my career, while I spent the past 25 years as a CFO, there was a period of time I stepped out of finance and ran operations. So
Mm,
I
mm.
have that as a part of my background, which was a unique challenge, but incredibly rewarding. And what it did was gave me that platform, that background to become a business partner to the CEO, a business partner to the executive team, to see the business with a different lens.
You've always struck me in the many years that we've known each other, you've always struck me as a true operator. So I'm not surprised to hear you say that. Now, let me ask you this. You took your last company in the direction of evolving from a small family-owned company, successful in its own right, nonetheless, to a very significant private equity-owned enterprise. In fact, one of the largest private equity-owned companies in its industry. How did you guide leadership at the company and manage that important transition? What was it like for you as CFO? Because making that transition from small family to large, very large private equity with much of the same leadership in place is a huge evolution. So, how did you guide leadership, and what was it like for you as a CFO to do that?
I think that the leadership there is, as you described it, that's key. Leadership and uh, being able to promote change and having the right organization in place. Again, kind of talk about that complexity curve, but making sure what we refer to is making sure we have the right people in the right seat of the bus. Do we have the organizational structure in place? Do we have the tools in place? Do we have the processes? And making sure that you're positioned for growth ahead of the curve, right? So, and providing that leadership, but that leadership, it goes both ways. Leadership down within the organization to make sure we have the right resources, but also the leadership to work with the executive team and the private equity sponsors to lay out the plan for growth. Um, and again, I'm going to say this a few times, but do what you said were you going to do. And as you deliver and you're successful, the private equity sponsors will gain that confidence to continue to provide the financials. So that leadership, I see those two directions: leadership within the organization, and then leadership upward to with the executive team and your private equity sponsors and lenders.
So that makes perfect sense. Talking about private equity, am I correct that at one point you managed 10 separate private equity sponsors, or was that over a period of time?
It's over a period of time. I've been in companies where we've had one private equity sponsor for my entire duration. I've been in a company where we've had 10 over a 15, 16-year period. We had four at any one time. So, we start out with a small local private equity firm, but as we're growing and you're demonstrating that growth, you may need more capital for M&A and CapEx and working capital. So you expand your investment portfolio either with the existing PE group or you bring in additional private equity. I've seen it both ways, and different challenges. Having four different private equity firms and a syndicate of lenders at any one time and an executive team. You need to be nimble, but again, delivering on what you said you're going to do goes a long way.
Sure. And an awful lot of communications, an awful lot of reporting, and you still have all your hair.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, we've talked about this, but a CFO in the private equity world, the life expectancy is about 4 years. So for me my career, I've spent the past 25 years as a CFO in the private equity world. I think it says a lot. We have to have a lot of patience and a lot of discipline. Again, both directions to have your team follow you and understand the growth trajectory, but also working with the private equity group and delivering on what their expectations are.
Well, you said something very important. You said, having a team follow you. Teams don't follow poor leaders. So apparently, you're able to instill an element of confidence in an awful lot of people who are willing to follow you. So, and I'm not the least bit surprised about that. But let's stay with this transition, the concept of transition from family to private equity or privately held to private equity. Based on your experience, if you were to offer guidance to uh, leadership at a privately held company that's contemplating moving on to private equity, what would you suggest to them that they should be thinking about? And not just from the business perspective, there are emotional elements to this, there are promises. So what kind of overall guidance would you give to family run entrepreneurial type folks who are really good at what they do and asking themselves, should we go private equity?
Think you touched on a few very important points in there. Some of those decisions aren't necessarily financial. They become emotional. You've got a small, call it mom and pop, family owned, operated business. Grandpa's name might be on the side of the truck or the building. Um, Truly understanding why they're looking to sell. Are they looking to exit completely? Do they want to be a part of a larger organization? Is this estate planning? Are they looking to pass the business down to their kids? So, truly understanding the purpose of why they're engaging with one, selling the business into a larger private equity backed company. They really need to understand that. Uh, Culture is key. In a number of companies that I've worked with, we made a point of maintaining that family owned and operated culture throughout, even as we grew from 50 to 100 to 500 million of revenue, maintaining that culture. Also, with the acquisitions, do the sellers want to stay on board? Maybe the seller's family want to stay on board. So I've seen that where it's been a very successful transition, maintaining the family within the larger organization. And that truly helps maintain the family culture also. But also from a family perspective, knowing that they've been making the day-to-day decisions every day of their career. Now they're part of a larger organization where decisions are made at a different level. Uh, Boy, the customers, they have my personal cell phone number. They call me when they need something. Well, now those calls are going to a centralized call center. That's a major change from an entrepreneur, and making sure that they understand those type of changes early in the process so there's no surprises. I've seen a few deals uh, not come through fruition at the very end because reality set in. The emotions got there of, oh my God, what am I doing? This is dad's business, grandpa's business. No, I don't want to be a part of a larger organization. I want to continue to make the decisions myself. Um, so they really need to understand that early on.
Brian, I think you're spot on. The emotional aspect of selling a business is crucial to understanding before those decisions can be made. I mean, think about it. What drives many entrepreneurs to success is emotion. They want to win. They need to win. They want to do something for their family. They're feeding their children. They're managing a legacy, like you said, that their father, their grandfather, or grandmother or mother started. All those things are emotions. Eventually, they have to distill down to dollars and cents and operations. But the entrepreneurial spirit is very, very emotional. And you're right. Transitioning from that kind of culture, dare I say, lifestyle to one of a true corporate environment where it's more formal and it's larger and it's vastly different very often, is a real challenge for many. And yeah, it gets in the way sometimes, and others are able to deal with it. But I agree with one of your first comments is that it starts with the entrepreneur deciding, do they wish to sell out And I don't mean that in a negative sense. Sell out meaning sell a company and go away completely, or do they want to sell in and become part of something else for themselves, for their family members, for their partners, for others? We see that on the real estate side, as we advise companies on the real estate implications of buy and sell side M&A, and we have the very same conversations with them as a component of the overall deal. What do you want to do with the real estate that you've acquired in the many years that you're in this business? Do you also want to sell that out, or do you want to sell that in? So it trickles down to the same conversation. I think you're spot on. Um, so let me switch gears a little bit and move away from the private equity discussion for focus a little bit more on your career. You've done some really great things. You've been with a bunch of different companies, in different types of companies, different industries, different regional aspects, different structures, and you've successfully advised leadership throughout your entire career. Share with me some of your more memorable career highlights.
Memorable, but I'll talk about kind of transitional. And I'll start right at the beginning. You know, I started out in public accounting, and I'd recommend and mentor the young up and coming executives these days. If you really want to go into accounting and finance, starting out in public accounting it's a great place to start. It's kind of where I grew up. From a technical perspective, management skills, time management, becoming executive. It was a great place to start. Midway in my career, stepping out of finance and going to operations was huge for me personally and professionally. Um, I've been through a number of transactions where I've been on the buy side and I've been on the sell side also. And having the operations experience has my career has benefited significantly from that. Being that business partner to an executive team and a CEO, I'm not sure I could have done that without stepping out of finance and taking an operating role. And then I would say the third is building those teams. Um, Super proud of what I've built over the years, and I look back and sometimes we don't realize that the people that we touch and the lives that we've touched and how people have grown with us. You can't do this alone. I could not do 50 acquisitions in 15 years on my own. You need the team and the people, the infrastructure behind you. And, I look back, I'm just super proud of what we've built and what we've accomplished and the friendships and go back to that family that we've developed over the years. So it's to me, that's probably the most rewarding aspect. I've had people relocate from around the world to come work on my team. I've had one woman work at 4 different companies with me. And I look back on that and I find that incredibly rewarding. The development, the team building, the friendships and the family that we've developed over the years.
You know what, Brian? I know you for 20 years. I'm not surprised to hear you say that you didn't do this alone. Uh, but at the same time, you led what sounds like some very, very good people. And it sounds like you led people who worked for you and people you worked for. You led I'll say a 360-degree circle. And you're right. You can't do this on your own, and I'm not surprised to hear you acknowledge that because I don't know that many other people would. But given that we know each other so long and we know a little bit about each other's personal lives, I know you're not ready to go out to pasture. You're not by any stretch. I know you're not done. In fact, might say that you're just getting started again. So before, but I also know you promised me you're going to take some time off. So before you get back in gear, before you throw yourself back into this and do great things for another company or other companies, what are you going to be doing on a non-career basis? How are you going to take some personal time?
Yeah. I'm going to say family first, Andy. Spend some time with the family, uh, taking care of our health, right? Without our family and our health, what do we have, right? So just taking some time to decompress, recharge, spend more time with the family. I also want to give back. It's we've been working so hard for so long. Do we really have the time or take the time to give back to the organizations or folks that have helped us along the way? So I am looking for participation in nonprofits. I'm looking for opportunities in mentorship programs. I've reached out to my business school that I went to, and how can I help mentor, the young and up and coming finance executives.
Wow.
So, looking for different ways outside of the business world on how I can stay engaged and kind of give back to the community.
You know what? That's great. And with that mentality, you will end up doing, even more great things in other directions. For years in our company, we've had something called pro bono real estate services, where for bona fide charitable organizations, not for profits, we'll provide, up to 5 hours of free service just to offer guidance because there are many great organizations out there with wonderful missions that are long on good intentions and short on expertise. So, like you, if we can offer our services to help, we do. And I'm proud of you that you're doing that. I say that as a friend, and not the least bit surprised. So my last question is: so after you take a little time, and after you start resting again, and you kind of get in your new groove, um, what do you plan to do to, kind of redeploy that focused expertise that you've honed throughout your career?
Yeah. As you can imagine, Andy, like you said, we've known each other for many years. I still have gas in the tank. And I also truly believe that I can continue to add value in that mid-market private equity backed space and high growth companies.
Oh,
And
Brian, there's no doubt that you're going to be able to do that for some really great companies.
looking to, you know, do I work for some private equity portfolio companies and help them, with maybe it's a new investment that they need some support internally. So kind of on an advisory basis, project based interim work. I'd love to sit on a few mid-market boards also to provide that guidance and, be it my operational or financial expertise from over the years to help guide mid-market companies through their growth trajectory. I think that one, it'd be fun, and I thought I would find that very rewarding. And yeah, I've told folks I've been receiving some phone calls and emails, and yeah, I if it's something I'm fun and with people I like, I'll take those phone calls all day long. So looking to get back at it after you said I have to recharge the batteries and spend a little time with the family. I'll be looking, into the CFO advisory services field, really focused on private equity backed mid market high growth companies.
And no doubt, when you let the world know that you're ready, I expect your phone will be ringing very loudly, very frequently. It's very interesting. We're friends. We know each other a long time. You've been a client, and yet, as long as we know each other, I still learn new things from you each time we talk.
It's been fun, Andy, and I appreciate your time and your friendship and guidance. We've been business partners for a number of years, and it's folks like you and others in my network that I'm going to continue to enjoy that time and continue our professional and personal relationships.
Thank you, my friend. That means a lot. Brian, this has been great. I'm so grateful that you let me twist your arm to come on to CFO IQ today. I think you shared some great insights. I'm sure our audience, basically your CFO peers and potentially folks who will be interested in talking to you about engaging you, are going to get a lot out of today's conversation. Really appreciate you being here today, Brian. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Andy. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today on CFO IQ. If you'd like to learn more about Brian Giambagno, visit our website at cfoiq.com. If you'd like to be considered for a CFO IQ interview or for a business story in CFO Intelligence magazine, by the way, you can read about Brian Giambagno also in CFO Intelligence magazine. Or if you just have suggestions as to topics that you'd like us to explore, email me at andrew.zezas@cfointel with two L's.com and let me know your ideas. Join us again here on CFO IQ for our next exciting CFO interview. Thanks very much for joining us here. I'm Andrew Zezas. You keep thinking.
For booking inquiries, please visit CFOIQ.com or email andrew.zezas@cfointel.com.